everyone, welcome to Growing Web3. Today with us I have Tom Schmidt. He is a partner at Dragonfly Capital. Great to have you on the show. Maybe we could kick off. You could give a little introduction to everyone listening.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm a partner at Dragonfly Capital. We're a global crypto venture fund. Been here for about 2 years, and before Dragonfly, I used to lead product at 0x. They're one of the largest decentralized exchanges. If people are familiar with 0x API or Matcha, worked on some of those products. And then before that, I was a product manager at Instagram for about 3 years, sort of doing general consumer tech. And then before that, I did CS undergrad. So sort of that's kind of where I got into crypto.
Awesome. So Dragonfly, they're investing in kind of like a wide range of protocols, right, and decentralized technologies. Is there kind of a focus area, or is it just very much a broad kind of scope?
Yeah, we only do crypto. So maybe some context for folks out there. So Dragonfly started life as a fund of funds when it was started in 2018. So we would invest in other funds, and we pivoted in doing direct investments only starting in 2019. And so we're a little bit different than a lot of other funds in the space, which are structured more as hedge funds, where they're buying and selling tokens and trying to trade. For us, when we do an investment, we have a 5+ year holding period. So really, our model is we invest in the really early stages. We work really closely with founders. We help them on product, design, data, go-to-market hiring, all that kind of stuff. Just given that everyone on the team previously used to work in the crypto industry, and for the most part is technical. And so we like to get hands-on with founders in the early stages. And we're sort of that long fund life lets us be pretty agnostic around the types of investments that we do. So we invest in early stage protocols. We invest in CeFi companies. We invest in data companies like Dune Analytics. Sometimes we'll buy NFTs. Sometimes we'll buy stuff on the open market, or we'll contribute into DAOs. We really don't have a specific limitations on what we invest in. It's really just like, hey, who are the best founders who are building the most generational projects in the space?
Awesome. And what kind of things do you look for in teams, like around their go-to-market strategy? Is that like important, or are you like kind of really focused on the technology?
No, I think we very much care about go-to-market. I think oftentimes for a lot of projects in a lot of categories, they can often be somewhat winner take all, and oftentimes the market is choosing more on narrative and momentum more so than pure tech. I think of like Oracle as a good example, where I think Chainlink is like a fine Oracle system, maybe not the most technically sophisticated, but in reality, it was sort of good enough to get momentum and sort of become the market leader. Oftentimes we're also looking at this concept of founder market fit. So do you have the network? Do you have the background? Do you have sort of the experience to break into a maybe specific niche or specific space versus somebody sort of showing up out of the blue and wanting to go work on something very esoteric? So go-to-market is super important. And I think also when we're doing investment rounds, we try to be pretty collaborative and try to bring in other strategics who can sort of partner with the team that we're investing in. So, if it's a wallet, maybe, partnering with, people who might want to, integrate with you, or people who might want to adopt you. Or if it's like a lending protocol, it's like, okay, maybe integrate with, some of these treasury managers that are going to be depositing into you and sort of, building up a network that way.
Absolutely. I remember like Chainlink, they kind of brute forced their way to growth, I think, through the bear market. Like their community was just relentless. But it was kind of amazing. Like it really showed like memes that can drive narratives, and it drove them up like CoinMarketCap, and that was it. They weren't going anywhere after that. And then they had like their base to just build out everything else on top of that.
Yeah, it's sort of like good enough, right? It's hey, I'm a founder. Am I going to choose some brand new Oracle system that's sort of untested, that doesn't have the wide support, that doesn't have the brand of Chainlink, or am I just going to use Chainlink? And I think oftentimes that tends to be the answer, even if the market winner isn't the most technically optimal or superior product. And so that go-to-market and speed matters a lot.
Cool. And what kind of you kind of touched on it? What kind of things do you do to help founders like really get hands-on with growth? So you mentioned you make introductions. Kind of, do you help with their strategies as well?
Yeah, we tend to go really deep. It depends on the founder, but for seed stage stuff, we're meeting with them, every other week, working on strategy, working on product, working on design. We have a head of talent who is formerly at 0x, who helps teams with their hiring strategy and sourcing. We sort of send out really good candidates to the team. We have a GC who helps teams think about legal strategy as well. We'll bring on a few more folks, but it's even more basic stuff too. It's like, hey, if you want to do a press outreach thing, we can help you with that. If you want a quick June dashboard, I can help you with that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like really basic stuff.
Super cool. I remember like I was part of the Ribbon community kind of early on, hang out in the Discord. I remember, I think you were there as well. There were like loads of pretty cool people hanging out. I think I think they really nailed their early community strategy. Do you have some thoughts around what you think went well there, what they did better than other founders?
Yeah, I've been reflecting on that a little bit recently too. I think part of it is, attracting kind of options nerds, but in a way that makes it sort of onboardable or palatable. And I think, Julian and Ken have also just done a great job with having the right kind of discourse and the right kind of, vibe within the community in the early days too. But I think what was also cool about it is it was not incentivized. It was not monetarily incentivized in the early days. It was just people showing up who thought it was really cool. And I think that lets you as a founder really verify that you have product market fit, that you have a community. I think a lot of quote unquote communities are in reality people who are there because the price has gone up or because they're getting compensated through liquidity mining or something. But by just sort of launching something raw, you can see if you have organic product market fit. I think that naturally sort of makes things a bit stickier and a bit stronger. So I think they did a really good job with how they thought about the token distribution and just like staging of the product. So and obviously the product is killer. They're sort of really defined. Yeah. They invented this whole category of decentralized options vaults. The design is fantastic. So they also really nailed the product as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's like a tough challenge. Like everyone asks, how do I build a community? I'm like, well, just find like 50 people, like reach out manually, like the classic do things don't scale. Just get them in get them in a Discord and get chatting. And if there's interesting conversations and people are engaged, that's like half the battle, right? And I think from there, then you've just got to try and figure out how to scale it. And usually through Twitter, that's kind of not too difficult. But yeah, it was a super cool community to be involved with early on.
Yeah, I think the Ribbonati is still somewhat influential, and I think they're still doing deals. And I think Ribbon still has a amazing hold on design and brand and product, and they're really just out shipping everybody else. And I think it's a testament to the power of having a strong early community.
What do you see in founders early on? What kind of things don't they get about go-to-market growth, community strategies? And what things do you think they could get better at?
A lot of founders, I think, come at product with an approach of just kind of build it and they will come. Obviously that's wrong. You need to be somewhat aggressive about marketing your product, or thinking specifically about how you're going to get people to use it, who those first 100 users are going to be, what kind of experience they're going to have. Are you going to have a cold start problem, or is there a great kind of single player experience when people show up to use your product? But I think broadly speaking, probably the main thing I see is founders not having a clear sense of narrative. Oftentimes they're trying to do too many things, or the narrative is kind of esoteric or niche or too vague. And I think what you want to do is create a meme around your product, not like an image meme, but like a narrative meme. So people think, Ribbon, cool, like Theta Gang, we're selling, selling options, and it's sort of this whole meme around the options vaults. Sustainable yield is sort of the other thing that they've sort of coined. So I think really it's sort of about refining your product, thinking what is the one thing that we need to drive home, if it's a narrative, if it's a metric, if it's a entry point into the product, and then just sort of greasing the skids to make that happen. So making it super easy to onboard users, looking sort of up funnel and thinking about where you're going to get new flows from, like 0x API, for example. More than half the volume is coming not from Matcha, but it's coming from a lot of these other sources. And so you sort of have this evergreen network of people who are using the product, in addition to just this single matcha product being a good example of how to sort of think about getting new flows and think about onboarding new users onto the product beyond just sort of shipping it and hoping people find it on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been thinking about this like meme narrative and this push, and why is it so important in crypto? And it feels like things are pretty complex, and there are so many new products that when someone has like a really strong narrative and can like succinctly explain what they do in like 5 words, it's really easy to share and spread. And I think DeFi has done that pretty well, like a lot of top DeFi products. I think it's kind of getting more difficult with like NFT projects and gaming projects, but I think they're obviously growing super fast. So I'm wondering how they're being successful. I guess they're more visual, right? So it's easy to spread.
Yeah, I think NFTs are kind of a lot more like fashion, where people maybe have their own taste, but people also look to tastemakers, and oftentimes there's a lot of subjectivity around it. I think you could say certain things are objective, like, oh, it's done on chain, or the code is beautiful, or there's some other element about the way the project is done that makes it attractive, like CryptoPunks being given out for free is sort of the OG. Okay, that's like an objective fact about the product, but a lot of it is subjective and sort of narrative forming, right? I think a lot of people think of CryptoPunks as like being like Bitcoin, but that's not inherently a thing. That was just a narrative that somebody came up with, and then I think other people in the community have sort of followed it, and people look to what other folks are doing to sort of come up with their own opinions, right? Like when we're thinking about, again, fashion, it's not, there's some objective truths about maybe the quality of the clothing or the brand or where it's made, but a lot of it is just sort of this mimetic desire. So certainly there's a component to that, but also just I think people again have their own sort of personal taste.
Yeah, absolutely. And like this air of like exclusivity as well, with like Bored Apes kind of nailed that pretty well. And yeah, I feel like their narrative right now is just have every celebrity own a Bored Ape. And I mean, that's probably the best go-to-market strategy I think someone can have, or a project can have. So I've been kind of constantly impressed by how relentlessly they've like driven that strategy home.
I agree. I mean, certainly they're not the first 10K PFP project, but I think in reality, I think it's partnering with a lot of these artist agencies to sort of promote Bored Apes within their clients. But then it becomes, hey, now you have Bored Apes on Jimmy Fallon, and you have celebrities talking about Bored Apes, and then oftentimes that's the way sort of luxury brands manifest, is just by people looking at famous, wealthy people and sort of again stimulating that mimetic desire.
At the moment, are you working a lot with gaming companies? I know Dragonfly has invested a lot in like the top layer 1 protocols, a lot of the top DeFi protocols as well. But yeah, are you also have you been working with play to earn ecosystems and NFT ecosystems as well?
Yeah, I think, generally speaking, we are a little bit more conservative around some of the play to earn projects. I think some of the projects that I see getting investment, or the way I see getting promoted, I'm very wary of, because I think they actually tend to be not very good games, and almost all the momentum is sort of driven by the play to earn component. And you can think of it again very similar to DeFi, where you can see oftentimes it's like a very good natural experiment where you'll have a team that has a product that has some very small amount of organic traction, and then they turn liquidity mining, and TVL goes up 20x, and they're like, oh, look at our traction, and you can very clearly see what's being paid for and what's not, and how much revenue they're also generating for the payment. So I think when we have done a few play to earn games, but for the most part it's teams that have previously built great gaming titles, and I think they have a really, really sensible approach as to like why play to earn makes sense, or why integrating some sort of crypto component into their product makes sense, versus just, hey, we're already working on this thing, let's slap it on a blockchain and call it a day. So I think we both believe that the team can deliver a great game that everybody at Dragonfly wants to play, and we think other people want to play. but it's also like the crypto component is being really thoughtful. We've also invested in a few sort of infrastructure type projects. Open Guild being one of them. It's sort of like a platform for building guilds, and
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. Where independent of the actual game, I think there will always probably be some sort of play to earn component, and this is just sort of providing core infrastructure for guilds that want to participate in that ecosystem. So I think we occasionally take sort of infrastructure type bets that are a little bit more indexed and a little bit sort of game agnostic.
Yeah, it feels like infrastructure projects, like their go-to-market strategy is very much around like BD. They have to really have someone like who's really phenomenal at just networking, like getting the most value out of investors. Kind of, I don't know if it's doing the conference circle, just basically just getting on calls and just smashing kind of a sales type of strategy. Like play to earn games. I feel like it's really like something that can be done. Like growth can be done like in a more traditional digital marketing Web2 way, which is like, you can run ads, you can do huge campaigns. There's still like a huge community element, but I think the growth strategy there is very much like, let's just get as many people playing this as possible as soon as we can and go pretty big.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I think that tends to be kind of what we see in the market.
So I'm going to ask you a couple questions around like your like personal views. Like, so if you were going to join a team today, as their like CMO, head of growth, or head of product, even, which one would you go for?
That is a tough question. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm very biased, and I think all the Dragonfly portcos are really excellent. But one that's kind of, I guess, stood out to me recently is Gem. They're the NFT exchange aggregator.
Yeah.
We led their seed round, and I think that the team, from like an engineering and design standpoint, just 10 out of 10. Like Vasa is a total boss, and the product's incredible. And I think increasingly we see it becoming the preferred choice for people to buy and sell NFTs. And I think there's just so much room to run in the NFT ecosystem, especially for this product, which has really kind of defined a category, that I get really excited about, building a narrative around Gem, and already been helping them with some of their growth ideas, and it seems like it's a good fit. So I think doing something in the NFT space seems really exciting to me, even though a lot of my background is in DeFi. I think if I had to do something in DeFi, Alchemia comes to mind. It's another one of our portfolio companies. They're sort of doing like basically on-chain mining derivatives, but more broadly speaking, you could think of it as sort of like a fungible marketplace for block space. And I think it's like this brand new primitive in DeFi that we haven't really seen yet. I think is just going to sort of change the game in terms of how can we compose with other types of assets to create new yield opportunities, create new hedging opportunities, just to create this whole ecosystem sort of around it. So I think that's really cool. And again, the team is like 10 out of 10, and they're just so perfect for what they're doing.
Super cool. Yeah, I think Gem is a phenomenal product. I guess it's like, is it fair to say it's like 0x of NFTs, or is it's more of an aggregator, right?
More of an aggregator. It's more of like the 1 inch of NFTs. I guess 0x is obviously now doing aggregation, so very similar. But yeah, it's you can see NFTs across all the different marketplaces. You can bulk buy, so you can floor sweep and buy 5 NFTs in one transaction. And they've actually done a lot of gas optimization on their contracts, so it's actually cheaper than buying on OpenSea directly. So you save like 39% on your gas fees. So if you're buying a bunch of NFTs, it's a few $100s that you're saving.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which is pretty cool. And the UI is beautiful. They've done a great job with the design. So
yeah, I saw they said on Twitter recently like they're going to have like some crazy sweep the floor option. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, and the havoc it will wreak on the market. But should be fun. Where do you see like user growth over the next few years? Like say in 3 years, where do you see like the most, like which kind of sector of the industry do you think will have the most users, like DeFi, NFTs, or play to earn? I guess play to earn NFTs are kind of there's a crossover there, but where do you think like most of the user growth will come from?
I mean, I think if you just look at sort of Web2 comps, gaming seems to be the largest layer, probably the most likely to sort of take off. I think one thing I've kind of been surprised by, I guess, is initially I was pretty bought into this CDFI thesis, which has been somewhat popular in Asia, where you have centralized exchanges or centralized CeFi products that basically offer DeFi under the hood to their users. So the user accounts aren't actually reflected in DeFi because it's, hey, I'm depositing into OKX and then they're depositing into Compound for me. But just anecdotally, having seen some of their numbers, those are driving a large number of the deposits into DeFi, and it's sort of offering the best of both worlds in theory, where you're getting DeFi products and you're getting DeFi yields, but you don't have to worry about the weirdness of dealing with MetaMask and managing your private key, which I think a lot of people are going to be wary about. I think in practice, we've actually seen a lot of warming up to the idea of having your own wallet and using MetaMask, and we've seen so many people use these services and things like OpenSea natively, as opposed to going through sort of a proxy. So I don't know if that's going to continue, but certainly that's a trend that I would not have expected, and I think that's been pretty impressive to see. I think one area that I'm maybe a bit more skeptical of in terms of user growth is like the decentralized social space. I think for the most part, when we see teams building, oftentimes there's it feels like the main value prop is that it's decentralized and it's censorship resistant, which I think is sort of a tail risk thing for the majority of users. 99.9999% of users will never experience censorship, and so in reality, you have sort of a version of Twitter that doesn't have content, doesn't have your social network, doesn't have good ranking, doesn't have good UX. So it's like, but you can kind of post whatever you want, which is also kind of a double-edged sword. And so I think there's potentially room for decentralized social products in the future, but they need to be a little bit smarter about how they think about sort of overcoming that activation energy and building a critical mass of users to make this thing viable, and maybe even tapping into what's happening in the rest of crypto a little bit more. I think DeSo or BitClout, I think screw up a lot of things with its product and go-to-market and things that we're not investors, things that I disagree with. But I think they did nail this idea correctly around sort of having creator tokens and allowing people to sort of tap into what made DeFi interesting, but allow people to speculate on products or accounts and help those creators in those accounts monetize as well. And so I think a successful product in this space should probably be tapping into something like that, where it's not just, hey, it's decentralized, but it's also building on the rest of what makes crypto great. So I think a product that does something like that well could actually be probably the next source of user growth.
That's super cool. Yeah, I was surprised at how aggressive DeSo were, but then it kind of made sense, because I'm like, if they're not that aggressive, they're just going nowhere. Like, no one would care. I think the only way they could capture any attention was by pissing people off, just to get their attention and make them act, and they did. And I wouldn't ever recommend that strategy to anyone, but it kickstarted something.
It's true. I think, there's a lot of components that I think, piss people off. The creator token, drop aside, I think it was also just the tech choices and the whole seed phrase Google Drive thing, and there's a lot of weirdness around it. But you're absolutely right. I think they showed in the initial days that, like, hey, if they had the right components to get a flywheel going, if not, sustain it fully. Yeah, and it's phenomenally hard to start any social network. Remember there was one a long time ago called Hello or Elo or something. It was Facebook competitor, and it did well for 3 or 4 days, and that was it. It's old news. But to get any further than that and bridge people across is just phenomenally hard. But I think it could be a few years away, but it's an interesting one. Yeah, sounds good. I think I would not be surprised if we see something that develops a new type of media or really taps into what makes crypto more interesting beyond just sort of the censorship resistance, which I think is what we've seen be successful in DeFi, right? Like, people aren't using Compound necessarily because they can't get access to yield products elsewhere, but it's just it's a novel experience, or because they're worried about their bank shutting on their account, but it's actually just a novel experience that provides a better experience than what they can get elsewhere. It has this knock-on benefit of being self-custodied and being censorship resistant. So I think it has to be sort of an addition as opposed to being the full meal.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was super cool to hear all your views, and yeah, speak very soon.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me.